When people think of Rome's collapse, they imagine barbarians storming the gates, cities burning, and emperors poisoned in marble halls. But the empire didn't fall because of swords. It fell because of silver. Long before its legions vanished, its money did. The denarius, once nearly pure and trusted across continents, became a hollow symbol of fading faith. As the silver drained from the coins, confidence drained from the people. Prices soared, trade froze, armies demanded more pay, and the empire that once ruled the known world quietly destroyed itself from within. And here's the part most people miss: we're repeating the same story. Modern nations believe they can print wealth, stretch debt, and manipulate value without consequence. But history never forgets, and it always collects its debt. Rome's collapse isn't ancient, it's a mirror, because when money dies, empires die with it. Every empire begins with a story, and Rome's story was written in silver. When the first denarius was minted around 211 BC, it wasn't just another coin, it was the empire's heartbeat, a piece of metal that carried the weight of destiny. Each denarius gleamed with almost pure silver, its shine reflecting Rome's confidence and order. Soldiers trusted it because it paid for their loyalty. Merchants trusted it because it moved freely across borders, and ordinary citizens trusted it because it preserved the value of their labor and their dreams. The denarius became more than currency. It was belief cast in metal, a promise that Rome's word was as strong as its legions. As long as people believed in Rome, they believed in its money, and that faith fueled an empire that seemed unbreakable. Yet beneath that faith lay the quiet burden of empire: endless wars, distant provinces, and the constant hunger for expansion. Every victory demanded payment. Every road and aqueduct another drain on the treasury. Power demanded growth, growth demanded armies, and armies demanded gold. The coin that once built unity would soon be stretched to buy survival. Rome had forged the perfect symbol of strength, but also the perfect tool for its undoing, a shining reflection of power that would one day reveal the cracks beneath. Running an empire was never cheap. Legions had to be fed, armed, and paid. Roads, aqueducts, and monuments had to be built to show power that never slept. For a time, Rome's conquests funded its ambitions. Gold from Egypt, silver from Spain, and tribute from defeated kings filled its vaults. But expansion has a limit, and by the 2nd century after Christ, that limit was reached. The frontier stretched thin, the enemies multiplied, and the flow of new wealth slowed to a trickle. Yet the costs kept rising. The emperors faced a choice: anger the people with new taxes, or quietly steal from them through their money. They chose the latter. Instead of raising taxes, they lowered the silver in the denarius. The coin looked the same, but its soul was fading. Under Augustus, it held 95% silver. By Caracalla's reign, barely half, and by Gallienus, less than 5. What had once been real metal was now bronze washed in deceit. The people noticed. Merchants weighed coins instead of counting them. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Prices climbed, trust cracked, and the empire began feeding on illusion. Rome had discovered the oldest financial trick in history: the art of pretending value still exists after it's gone.
It began slowly, almost invisibly. A few merchants started rejecting coins that felt lighter. A few soldiers demanded extra pay to match the rising cost of bread. But soon, the illusion shattered. Markets that once pulsed with life grew silent. Farmers refused to sell grain for coins that no longer bought anything real. Traders turned to barter, gold, or foreign currencies. Across the empire, from the crowded streets of Rome to distant outposts along the Rhine, trust, that invisible glue of civilization, began to crumble. The denarius, once a symbol of Rome's greatness, had become a daily reminder of decay. Families hoarded what little real silver remained, hiding it under floors while the government flooded the streets with worthless metal. Inflation spiraled, prices multiplied. The more the emperors minted, the less the coins meant. Soldiers threatened mutiny when their pay lost value overnight. Merchants closed their shops. The empire's arteries, trade, supply, communication began to clog. But instead of facing the truth, Rome printed more, believing it could outpace reality. Each new coin struck was another lie hammered into bronze. And when money lost meaning, laws lost authority. Without trust in value, there was no trust in Rome itself. What began as economic policy had become an existential crisis, the slow collapse of confidence that no army could fight and no decree could repair.
By the middle of the 3rd century, Rome was no longer a single empire. It was a machine tearing itself apart. In less than 50 years, more than 20 emperors rose and fell, many ruling for mere months before being assassinated by their own guards. Invasions struck from the north, plagues swept through cities, and famine haunted the countryside. But behind every disaster lurked the same invisible killer: broken money. Taxes were demanded in coins that lost value before reaching the treasury. Farmers abandoned their lands rather than pay in worthless silver. Trade routes that once connected the empire from Britain to Egypt fell silent as merchants refused imperial currency altogether. Panic turned into survival. Local economies reverted to barter, cities shrank, and once mighty legions began deserting. Rome's leaders tried everything to stop the bleeding. They enforced new taxes, fixed wages, and punished hoarders, but nothing restored faith. Then came Emperor Diocletian, determined to save the empire through force. In the year 301, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, setting fixed values for over 1,000 goods and services: bread, meat, clothing, even labor, all priced by decree. Disobedience meant death. But no law could make fake money real. Prices ignored the edict, the black market exploded, and trade nearly died. Rome had reached the point where even fear couldn't hold the system together. The empire still stood on maps, but in reality, it was already gone, hollowed out by the same disease that destroys every civilization that tries to counterfeit trust.
By the early 4th century, Rome was exhausted, an empire surviving on memory rather than strength. Inflation had devoured savings, trade had withered, and the people had lost faith in their rulers and their coins. Then came Constantine the Great, a man who understood that power could not stand on faith alone, it needed metal behind it. Around the year 312, he introduced a new coin, the solidus. Unlike the worthless denarius, it was minted in pure gold, precise in weight, unchanging in value. The solidus was not just currency, it was an act of restoration, a final attempt to rebuild trust in a system that had forgotten what value meant. And for a moment, it worked. The Eastern Empire, later called Byzantium, thrived under its stability. Trade revived, soldiers were paid in real gold, and the economy began to breathe again. But it was too late for the West. Centuries of corrosion had done their damage. The treasury was empty, the legions were thin, and the people had learned to survive without faith in Rome. When the barbarians finally entered the city in 410, they didn't destroy a superpower, they stepped over the corpse of one. The solidus may have shined in the East for another 1,000 years, but the West had already written its own obituary. Rome's fall wasn't a single moment in battle, it was the long echo of a broken promise, that money could be faked and the empire would survive it.
History rarely invents new mistakes, it just changes the names on the coins. Centuries after Rome's collapse, the same illusion returned, this time in paper instead of silver. After World War I, Germany faced impossible reparations and turned to the printing press for salvation. What began as a temporary fix became madness. By 1923, prices doubled every few days. Workers were paid with sacks of marks, children played with worthless bills, and a loaf of bread cost billions. Savings vanished, faith collapsed, and despair opened the door for extremism. Decades later, Zimbabwe followed the same script. Faced with debt, corruption, and shrinking production, its leaders printed trillions, convinced they could outsmart scarcity. By 2008, inflation reached numbers so large they lost meaning. 89.7 sextillion%. People carried wheelbarrows of cash to buy lunch. When the currency finally died, they turned to US dollars, admitting that trust can't be printed. Even America, long seen as immune, played its version of the game. In 1971, President Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold, promising stability. But once money was backed only by faith, the temptation was too strong. Over decades, debt soared, the money supply exploded, and purchasing power eroded quietly year after year. The coins still looked the same, but their value, like Rome's denarius, was fading. Different century, same delusion. Believing we can create prosperity by diluting truth. And the more advanced the system became, the easier the illusion spread, from printing presses to digital ledgers, from paper to pixels. The technology changed, but the story stayed the same: humanity chasing wealth by destroying the meaning of it. If there's one lesson, it's the quiet tax that steals wealth without a vote, the invisible force that has ended more empires than war ever did. Rome proved it, Germany proved it, and every nation that believes it can print prosperity will prove it again. Real wealth is never paper or digits on a screen. It's the land that feeds you, the skills that can't be devalued, and the assets that hold value when confidence disappears. The Romans once believed their coins would last forever. Germans in 1913 thought their marks were safe. Zimbabweans believed independence meant stability. They were all wrong. Stability is not a right. It's a story we tell ourselves until it breaks. The fall of Rome reminds us that no system is too great to fail and no currency too sacred to crumble. When money stops being real, everything built on it begins to shake. Contracts, trade, armies, governments, even morals. The barbarians at the gate were never the true danger. The real enemy was inside the treasury, wearing a crown and minting promises. So, when you see the same pattern today, rising debt, endless printing, eroding trust, remember this. Every empire laughs at history until history laughs back. And this time, the stage is global. The illusion, digital. The consequences, far greater. Because when every nation plays the same game, there's no one left to bail the world out.
If there's one lesson history keeps teaching, it's that inflation is never an accident, it's policy. It's the quiet tax that steals wealth without a vote, the invisible force that has ended more empires than war ever did. Rome proved it, Germany proved it, and every nation that believes it can print prosperity will prove it again. Real wealth is never paper or digits on a screen. It's the land that feeds you, the skills that can't be devalued, and the assets that hold value when confidence disappears. The Romans once believed their coins would last forever. Germans in 1913 thought their marks were safe. Zimbabweans believed independence meant stability. They were all wrong. Stability is not a right, it's a story we tell ourselves until it breaks. The fall of Rome reminds us that no system is too great to fail and no currency too sacred to crumble. When money stops being real, everything built on it begins to shake. Contracts, trade, armies, governments, even morals. The barbarians at the gate were never the true danger. The real enemy was inside the treasury wearing a crown and minting promises. And that same enemy wears new faces today. Central banks, politicians, institutions that call manipulation stimulus and debt growth. So when you see the same pattern, rising debt, endless printing, eroding trust, remember this. Every empire laughs at history until history laughs back. And when it does, it doesn't just reclaim wealth, it reclaims the illusion that created it. Every empire believes it's different, smarter, stronger, destined to last. Rome believed that too. Its emperors thought they could manipulate the value of money without consequence, that confidence could be commanded by decree. But history doesn't bend to politics. It only measures results. The denarius began as silver and ended as shadow. The same story echoed through Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, and now, quietly, through the global system that calls itself modern. Our coins and bills still shine, our screens still display wealth, but beneath the surface the same decay spreads. Too much debt, too little trust, too much illusion. Empires don't fall when their armies lose, they fall when their money does. The barbarians outside the gates only finished the job that began in the treasury. The fall of Rome was not a tragedy of invasion, but of imagination. The belief that paper, metal, or digits could replace real value forever. And here lies the warning. When money becomes a story instead of substance, collapse is only a matter of time. History doesn't repeat word for word, but it rhymes in patterns of arrogance and amnesia. Rome's echo isn't distant, it's here, humming through the markets, the debts, and the endless printing presses. You can see it in the rising cost of living, the shrinking worth of a paycheck, the quiet fear behind every financial miracle. Nations may change flags and leaders, but the cycle is eternal. Belief, excess, decay, denial, collapse. And each time, the people at the top promise that this time is different. It never is. The numbers grow, the zeros multiply, and the illusion deepens until the moment trust disappears. And when trust goes, everything follows. That's how empires die, not with fire and invasion, but with disbelief. Because the greatest collapse isn't of currency, it's of faith itself. And when faith breaks, the empire story ends exactly as Rome's did. Slowly, then all at once.